My name is Ethan, I'm 32 years old, and I never in a million years thought I'd be writing something like this on a public forum. But after what unfolded at what was supposed to be my best friend's joyous engagement party, I honestly feel like I'm carrying a weight that needs to be lifted, a story that needs to be told, if only to myself. For as long as I can remember, I've been the steady presence, the quiet anchor for Mark. He's 33, effortlessly charming, always drawing people in. The kind of guy who makes grand sweeping gestures that look incredible from the outside. I, on the other hand, have always been the one behind the scenes, the meticulous planner, the strategic thinker, the loyal confidant who pulled him out of countless self-made crises. From disastrous breakups that left him heartbroken on my couch to career meltdowns that required my late-night counsel, I was there. I helped him navigate college applications, talked him through his first big job interview, even helped him move apartments more times than I can count, each time lifting boxes heavy with his aspirations and sometimes his failures. And yet, despite being the bedrock of our friendship, I always felt like his sidekick, a reliable background character in the dazzling movie of his life. We grew up in a quaint, historic town in New England, the kind with cobblestone streets and centuries-old brick buildings. Mark and I were inseparable, practically joined at the hip from elementary school. He was the daring one, the one who'd convince me to climb abandoned water towers or sneak into the local fair after hours, inevitably getting us into scrapes, and I was the one, calm and methodical, who'd figure out how to get us out, patching up scraped knees and spinning believable tales for our parents. My folks, bless their hearts, always saw through Mark's boyish charm. Mark means well, Ethan, my mom would say, her eyes weary but kind. But you're the sensible one. Keep him grounded. And so I did, without question, without complaint. I remember one summer when we were 18, Mark took my dad's prized vintage speedboat out for a joyride. He wasn't supposed to. He came back hours later, the side of the boat horribly scraped, a gaping dent near the stern. Mark, pale and sweating, immediately launched into a dramatic story about a sudden rogue wave and an unexpected debris field. I knew it was a lie. I'd heard the bragging to his buddies earlier about how fast he could take it. But when my dad walked out, eyes narrowed at the damage, I stepped in. The engine sputtered, Dad, and he had to turn sharp to avoid something. It was an accident. My dad sighed, rubbed his temples. I spent my entire summer job earnings helping Mark pay for the repairs, ensuring our parents remained none the wiser. Silence. Peace maintained. Years later, when we were 24, Mark called me from a dilapidated motel in rural Nebraska. He'd embarked on a spontaneous, poorly planned cross-country road trip with a girl he just met, and they'd run out of money, their car broken down on the side of a dusty highway. He was desperate, embarrassed. I didn't hesitate. I drove straight through the night, 20 hours, fueled by strong coffee and a sense of duty. I picked him up, paid for the car repairs, listened patiently to his exaggerated tales of adventure and woe, and drove him home. Again, I kept his recklessness a secret from our families, smoothing things over, ensuring no ripples disturbed placid surface of his life. Again, silence. Again, peacekeeper. That was my role, my identity. Fast forward to the present day. Mark, my adventurous, sometimes chaotic best friend, is getting engaged. The lucky woman is Chloe. I've known Chloe for about a year now, and from our first meeting, I knew we wouldn't exactly be kindred spirits. She's undeniably ambitious, always impeccably dressed in designer labels, and possesses a sharp wit that often feels more like a thinly veiled judgment. She frequently calls my passion for historical architecture quaint, and often makes veiled jokes about my lack of corporate ambition, always delivered with a saccharine smile that makes it impossible to call her out directly. I've kept my distance, politely, professionally, but when the elegant, embossed invitations to their engagement party arrived, I RSVP'd yes. I even offered to help Mark with some of the arrangements, a gesture born of habit and a genuine desire for his happiness. I recommended a fantastic jazz band I knew from a charity event I'd organized a few months prior, and to my quiet satisfaction, he booked them. I didn't expect to be his best man. That coveted role was already reserved for his older cousin, Liam, a high-flying finance bro from New York that Mark barely saw twice a year. I wasn't delusional, but I thought I'd at least get a decent seat and a moment to feel like a truly valued part of his life. The engagement party itself was a spectacle. It was held at a swanky rooftop lounge in downtown Boston, perched high above the glittering city skyline. The entire space was transformed, draped in fairy lights and flowing white fabrics, with crystal chandeliers twinkling like distant stars. Very chic, very exclusive, very, very Instagrammable. I arrived early, a carefully chosen gift in hand, a vintage first edition of a classic American novel, a rare find, a subtle nod to Mark's often professed love for literature. It wasn't flashy, no, but it was thoughtful, personal, something meant to be cherished for years, unlike the impersonal designer gadgets I saw other guests arriving with. I checked in at the welcome table, manned by a stern-looking event planner with a headset and a clipboard. She gave me a tight, almost strained smile. "You're Ethan, right?" I nodded. She glanced at her tablet, her brow furrowed slightly as she scrolled. Ah, yes. You're listed under general attendees. We've allocated seating near the secondary bar for those who weren't part of the core planning committee. If you had RSVP'd with a +1, it might have been different, but since you're solo. I blinked, processing her words, a cold knot forming in my stomach. Sorry, what? I'm Mark's best friend. His oldest friend. His lifelong friend. The planner froze, a flicker of something akin to panic in her eyes. Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. That must be a mistake. Let me just... But before she could scurry off to rectify what seemed to be a glaring error, Chloe herself materialized beside us, gliding over in a perfect floor-length designer gown, her makeup flawless, her smile as perfect and as frosty as ever. Ethan, she chirped, drawing out my name like a thinly veiled sigh of exasperation. So glad you could make it. I told the planner about the seating. Hope you don't mind. We just had to make some tough calls space-wise, for efficiency. I looked at her, my voice low, controlled. You sat me at the secondary bar? She gave a quick, brittle laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Not at the bar, Ethan, darling, just near it. It's for general attendees, I mean, technically you weren't on the inner circle committee, and we really had to prioritize seating for close family and Mark's key business associates. You understand, don't you? No hard feelings, right? Her smile widened, but her eyes were already scanning the room, dismissing me. I didn't argue. I just looked past her, into the glittering expanse of the main lounge area. Tables draped in fine linens, adorned with elaborate floral arrangements and flickering candles, teemed with people laughing, clinking glasses, sipping artisanal cocktails. Mark's old college roommate, a guy he hadn't spoken to in 5 years, had a prime spot, practically at the head table. His distant aunt, known for her incessant gossiping, was front and center, holding court. And then I saw him, my former mentor, Mr. Davies, an esteemed, highly influential architect whom I deeply respected, sitting comfortably 2 tables from the couple's sweetheart setup, deep in an animated conversation with Mark's uncle. Mark had introduced us years ago at a professional networking event, and Mr. Davies had always praised my work, even offered me advice on several occasions. Of course, he had a prominent seat. Chloe must have noticed where my gaze lingered. Oh, yeah, she gushed, a little too brightly. We invited Mr. Davies. Mark and he really clicked, and he's been so supportive of Mark's career development. Just a natural fit, You don't mind, do you? I didn't say a word. The knot in my stomach tightened, cold and heavy. I just nodded slowly, a single deliberate gesture. I turned and walked toward the table I'd been assigned. It was awkwardly placed, almost shoved into a corner at the very edge of a high-traffic area, right next to the swinging service entrance where waiters kept rushing in and out, brushing past guests with their heavy trays of champagne and appetizers. It was loud, chaotic, the constant clang of dishes from the kitchen mixing with the muffled roar of conversation. It smelled faintly of spilled wine and overwhelmingly of disappointment. I sat there for a moment, just a moment. The jazz band started playing a lively tune, but I barely heard it over the pounding in my ears. I watched as the MC, a polished professional hired for the occasion, announced the couple's grand entrance. Everyone cheered, a wave of applause washing over the room. I watched Mark and Chloe, radiant and smiling, make their way through the cheering crowd. I watched Mark whisper something to Mr. Davies as they passed his table, and Mr. Davies smiled back, a little too warmly, a little too approvingly. I watched my carefully chosen personal gift being placed off to the side, ignored amidst a growing pile of flashy, expensive-looking boxes, a lonely sentinel of my misplaced thoughtfulness. Then, slowly, deliberately, I stood up. I walked back to the welcome table, the untouched gift box now feeling like a lead weight in my hands. I picked up the vintage book, and then I started walking toward the exit. As I passed Mark near the podium, where he was now laughing and accepting congratulations, he turned, saw me, and his smile faltered. His eyes widened slightly. He called out, his voice cutting through the ambient noise. Wait, Ethan, where are you going? I stopped, turned around slowly. The room, which had been buzzing with conversation, quieted just enough, a ripple of unease spreading through the crowd. My voice, when I spoke, was calm, clear, almost unnervingly level. General attendee, remember? A few people gasped. I think someone choked on their drink. A couple near the main bar exchanged wide-eyed glances. I didn't care. The burning sensation in my chest was dulling, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I walked straight toward the double doors, gift in hand. I wasn't storming out. There was no dramatic flair, no slammed doors. I walked slow, calm, deliberate. Each step was a quiet assertion, a final statement. That's what made it worse for them, I think. The quiet dignity of my exit, rather than an angry outburst. As I reached the parking garage, the cool night air hitting my face, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Mark. He was jogging after me, his expensive blazer flapping, his face a mixture of confusion and frustration. His mouth was moving, forming words, but he seemed unsure of what to say. Ethan, wait! Dude, what was that? Why are you leaving? Come on, it's my engagement party. I turned and faced him, standing under the harsh fluorescent lights of the garage. You let her sit me at the secondary bar, Mark, at your engagement party. My name was listed as general attendee. He hesitated, shifting his weight from foot to foot. I didn't realize, man. Chloe did the seating chart. I thought, look, it's not a big deal, right? You're here now. It's fine. I shook my head slowly, the cold fury starting to replace the hurt. Not a big deal? You gave Mr. Davies, a man you've known for a couple of years through me, a better seat than your own best friend? The one who's been there for you through everything? The one who kept you out of jail, who drove 1,000 miles just to pick you up when you were stranded? He looked acutely uncomfortable, scratching the back of his neck, his gaze darting away. We're not trying to exclude you, man. It's just, Chloe had a vision. She wanted certain people up front. She didn't want friction. Friction? I repeated, my voice still dangerously calm. You mean me existing in the same room as your high-profile business associates and former mentors? My presence created friction? He didn't answer. He just stood there, eyes fixed on the ground. That silence. That was the moment something in me broke. Or maybe more accurately, it snapped back together. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the gift or say something cruel or accusatory. I just turned around, unlocked my car, and got in. As I pulled away, the engine humming quietly, I saw him standing there in the stark light of the concrete expanse, half waving, half stunned, like he wasn't sure whether to be angry or ashamed. And that wasn't even the beginning of the real fallout. I didn't go home right away. The thought of my quiet apartment felt stifling, too small for the volcanic emotions swirling inside me. I drove aimlessly for a long while, the windows down, the cool night air whipping through the car, doing a better job of keeping me from boiling over than anything else could. I ended up at this quiet spot overlooking the Charles River, a hidden gem on the edge of the city, the kind of place where you can see the lights of Cambridge stretching out like scattered jewels against the dark, shimmering water. I parked, killed the engine, and sat in silence, letting it all settle. Not just the party, not just the insult of the seat, but years of it. Decades of subtle dismissals, of casual disrespect, of being relegated to the background, of being treated like a convenient tool in a story starring everyone but me. And somewhere in that profound silence, under the vast, indifferent sky, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. I wasn't going to keep swallowing the disrespect, keep making myself small, just to maintain a superficial peace that only served others. I didn't return any of Mark's frantic texts that night, or the ones that flooded my phone the next morning, nor did I reply to the saccharine, passive-aggressive text from Chloe that read, "Hey, sorry about the mix-up yesterday. Hope you're not still upset. Let's just move on, okay?" Yeah, I didn't reply. But I did open my laptop. See, I work as an architectural consultant specializing in historical restorations and complex urban planning projects. My job isn't just about drawing blueprints. It's about managing intricate projects, navigating labyrinthine legal frameworks, securing permits, and handling high-stakes negotiations with city councils, historical societies, and often the most demanding clients. One of my most recent and successful projects had involved a significant structural renovation and design overhaul of the very rooftop lounge Mark and Chloe had used for their engagement party. I knew the management team intimately, had worked closely with their contractors, and was intimately familiar with the intricate details of their booking clauses and operational policies. So I made a polite, professional call to the lounge manager, Mr. Henderson. He was a meticulous man, always grateful for my expertise and the high-profile referrals I often sent his way. I told him the truth, calmly and factually, that I felt deeply disrespected by the seating arrangements at the party, that I wasn't just some random attendee, and that, as a result, I would be reevaluating whether I could continue recommending his otherwise excellent venue for the high-profile events I often coordinated. He was quiet for a moment, absorbing my words. Then he said something that stuck with me. "Ethan, I'm truly sorry to hear that. I had my reservations about them from the start. They were surprisingly difficult clients, demanded a lot of last-minute changes, tried to haggle over every minor charge. Honestly, if you hadn't personally vouched for them when they first inquired, I might have reconsidered their booking altogether. We value your referrals immensely." That was all I needed to hear, because that meant there were vulnerabilities, there were receipts, there were contracts, and there was leverage. I didn't go nuclear right away. That's not my style. I'm more of a slow burn guy, methodical, precise. I prefer to let consequences unfold naturally, a ripple effect rather than an explosion. So I started small. First, I quietly rescinded a generous design consultation offer I'd made to a mutual friend of Mark and Chloe's who was renovating her historic brownstone. I had initially offered a steep friends and family discount, a substantial sum of money saved for her. I simply sent her a polite email stating that my professional availability had unexpectedly changed and I could no longer commit to her project at that rate. She understood immediately, though I could sense her disappointment. I was cutting threads, quietly, precisely, severing connections that had been taken for granted. But the truly significant moment came about a week later when I received an email from Mark. The subject line was succinct, almost desperate, urgent help needed. He was asking for a favor, a big one. Classic Mark. Apparently, he and Chloe were planning their dream honeymoon, a 6-week grand tour of Europe specifically focused on architectural marvels and exclusive cultural experiences. They'd been saving for years. But they'd run into a major roadblock with their travel agency, a new flashy firm Chloe had insisted on using because they offered exclusive, unbeatable deals. Now, they were scrambling. Their flights had been inexplicably canceled, their prepaid reservations at several boutique hotels had fallen through, and they were desperate to secure last-minute access to private historical sites that required special permits. Mark's email was laden with a familiar blend of panic and entitlement. "You're the only one I trust to navigate this kind of complex, high-pressure planning, Ethan. You're good at this stuff, man. Please, you're my only hope. We're losing thousands. Everything's falling apart." No apology for the party. No mention of my feelings. Just help me. I stared at the screen for a long moment, the cursor blinking, mocking me. And then I opened a new draft. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, formulating a polite but firm refusal. "Hey, Mark, I'd love to help, but unfortunately my schedule is completely booked right now. Good luck." But then I paused. I realized something more satisfying, more powerful than a simple refusal. I didn't need to say anything at all to them directly. Instead, I forwarded Mark's desperate email to an old colleague of mine, Sarah. Sarah is a travel logistics wizard, specializing in high-end, bespoke itineraries for VIP clients, often handling complex last-minute travel disruptions. I didn't ask her to help them. I asked her to put them on a non-preferred client list, a quiet industry term for clients who are more trouble than they're worth. It was petty, I'll admit that, a small vindictive pleasure. But it felt right. I'd spent years being the fixer, the silent support beam for a friendship that never truly acknowledged the immense weight I carried. And this time, instead of propping it up, I let it all fall. 2 days later, I got a frantic text from Mark. This time, he sounded less like a celebratory groom-to-be and more like a man unraveling, his composure completely shattered. "Did you tell Sarah not to help us?" She said something about an unsuitable client profile and hung up on Chloe. "What's wrong, man? We're stranded in Rome. Our next flights got canceled. Our villa won't refund us. Chloe's flipping out. What is your problem, Ethan?" I didn't answer. That night, I was out to dinner with a longtime professional colleague, celebrating a successful project bid, when I saw Chloe's name flash across my screen. This time she called. I let it ring, and ring. She left a voicemail, her voice tight with suppressed rage and desperation. "Ethan, I don't know what your issue is, but Mark is losing it. If this is about that stupid party, you need to grow up. We didn't mean to hurt your feelings. You've made your point. Now stop being childish and fix this." And that made me laugh out loud, a genuine, unburdened laugh right there at the dinner table. My colleague looked at me curiously. I just shook my head, still smiling. I didn't fix it. I didn't respond. I just sat back and waited, savoring the silence. Because I knew something they didn't. The real fallout hadn't even started yet. See, remember that rooftop lounge manager I mentioned? Mr. Henderson? Well, it turns out that a little-known clause in their meticulously drafted event contract stipulates a hefty 25% penalty for excessive last-minute guest list changes, unapproved outside vendors, and, crucially, failure to settle the remaining balance within 7 days of the event. Mark and Chloe, in their typical fashion, had apparently tried to sneak in a budget photographer who wasn't on the venue's approved list, causing a minor logistical nightmare. Then, they'd argued over a few $100s on the final bill, delaying payment. Mr. Henderson, a man of precise principles and a professional reputation to uphold, tired of chasing them down, quietly filed a formal complaint. This simple act triggered a chain reaction of escalating fees and the permanent withholding of their security deposit. The jazz band I had recommended also ended up lodging a formal complaint because Chloe had demanded an extended set at the last minute and then severely underpaid them, arguing that their performance wasn't quite up to par. And suddenly, Mark and Chloe weren't just dealing with a ruined honeymoon. They were looking at several $1,000s in mounting late fees, contract penalties, and a damaged reputation with high-end vendors. All because they tried to cut corners, cut costs, and most importantly, cut me out. And I hadn't even touched the final, most devastating card up my sleeve. About 2 weeks after the honeymoon disaster, which incidentally ended with them flying economy class, arguing the whole way home, and arriving deeply in debt and utterly miserable, I started getting tagged in photos from the engagement party on social media. A distant cousin, bless her oblivious heart, had posted a massive album with the caption, "Stunning night, unforgettable memories. Congrats, Mark and Chloe." I clicked out of a morbid curiosity, and I mean this in the most literal way. It was like watching a highlight reel of my own systematic erasure. There were 78 photos. In exactly 0 of them could you clearly see me. I wasn't in the post family shots. I wasn't in the group selfies with their college friends. I wasn't even mentioned in the lengthy caption thanking everyone who made the night magical. But you know who was prominently featured? Mr. Davies. Tagged, commenting, liking, praising the event. It felt deliberate now, not just bad planning or oversight. It was like Chloe had made a conscious decision that I was unimportant, an inconvenient ghost, and Mark, as always, had simply agreed. And that's when I decided. I wasn't just going to step away quietly anymore. I was going to hold up that mirror, a stark, unblinking reflection, and let them truly see what they had become, what they had done. I made a post. Just one. Simple, calm, factual. It was a slideshow of behind-the-scenes photos I had taken on my phone during the party's setup, back when I was still under the illusion of being a valued friend. Photos of me adjusting table numbers, helping the florist arrange bouquets, talking with the caterer about logistics, even a candid shot of me directing the jazz band's setup. I then included a single damning screenshot, the digital seating chart the planner had accidentally sent to me in a group email. It clearly showed my name, Ethan, with the damning label, Mark's Friend, under the general attendees list, literally an afterthought, placed next to the service bar. Then, I wrote my caption, choosing each word with meticulous care, helped choose the venue, found the jazz band, showed up early to help set up, was seated by the secondary bar as a general attendee, an afterthought. Bride said I should understand. So I left quietly. 2 weeks later, they asked for urgent help again. This time I declined. Apparently, that makes me petty. The post went semi-viral in our small, interconnected social circle. I hadn't expected it to, but people shared it, commented on it, and reached out to me. Old high school friends, former coworkers, even distant family members I hadn't spoken to in years. My cousin Lauren messaged me privately saying, "I knew something felt off that day. You looked so uncomfortable, standing there alone. I'm so sorry I didn't come over or notice more." Another friend from college added, "Honestly, I thought you just left early because you had a work emergency or something. Had no idea you were treated like that. It's messed up." Within minutes, the carefully constructed, pristine narrative Mark and Chloe had crafted for their perfect lives began to unravel, thread by painful thread. I didn't respond to everyone, not publicly, not privately, but I read every single word, every comment, every message. It felt immensely validating, a balm to wounds I hadn't realized were festering for so long. But it wasn't just the sympathy that mattered. It was what happened next. 2 days after the post went public, Mark called me again. I let it go to voicemail. This time he didn't sound angry or confused or even entitled. He sounded truly nervous. His voice was thin, reedy. "Hey, so Chloe's business contacts saw your post, man. And now Chloe is freaking out. She thinks you're trying to ruin her image. Her boss follows you, man. She's saying we need you to take it down immediately." I listened to that message while I was at the gym. The rhythmic thud of the treadmill, a counterpoint to Mark's panicked voice. I played it twice. Then, once more on the walk to my car, savoring each desperate syllable. I didn't reply. Instead, I made a second post. Been asked to delete my last post. Apparently, the truth is damaging to someone's image. I'd delete it if it wasn't 100% true. I won't be silenced for the sake of appearances. I spent too many years making myself small for other people's comfort. Never again. I included no names, no hateful words, no accusations, just pure, unvarnished honesty. That was the trick. People can debate opinions. They can't erase screenshots and seating charts. That post, even more than the first, got attention. Chloe's boss didn't comment publicly on my post, but a mutual friend who worked at her company sent me a screenshot, a company-wide Slack message, an urgent warning to employees to uphold respectful personal conduct even outside of work, along with a pointed reminder that personal perception reflects character. The fallout began unraveling fast after that. First, I got a call from Chloe's mother. Not a voicemail this time, a full ringing call that I allowed to go to voicemail. She left a 3-minute rambling rant about how damaging this was to their family reputation, to Chloe's career prospects, and how one day you'll regret making such a scene over a chair. Over a chair. That single phrase told me everything I needed to know. They still didn't get it. It wasn't about the chair. It was about years, decades of disrespect, of being undervalued, finally crashing through the dam I had so carefully built. Then came the group texts. Mark, in a last-ditch effort to do damage control and salvage what little was left of his public image, created a sprawling family and friends group chat. He added everyone, our immediate family, distant cousins, mutual friends, even old high school acquaintances. His first message, predictably, was an attempt to smooth things over. "Hey everyone, just want to address the recent social media drama. I think things got blown out of proportion. Let's all try to move forward, okay?" I stared at the message for a full minute, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Then, calmly, I typed, "Happy to move forward, Mark, but only when people take accountability for their actions, not when they dismiss the consequences as drama." Silence. A stunned, pregnant silence in the chat. Then, after what felt like an eternity, my aunt chimed in, cautiously at first. "Honestly, Mark, I always wondered why Ethan was seated in the back. We assumed he volunteered to help with the bar or something, but it did seem odd." Another cousin added, emboldened, "I thought you just left early because you were sick or something, Ethan. Had no idea you were treated like that. It's completely unfair." Within minutes, the carefully constructed, pristine narrative Mark and Chloe had so meticulously crafted for their perfect lives began to unravel in real time, exposed for all to see. And Mark? He left the group chat. Chloe, predictably, blocked me on every single platform. But here's where it truly comes full circle. About 3 weeks after the honeymoon disaster, after the flurry of social media posts, after the awkward family conversations, I got a handwritten letter in the mail. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and slightly smudged, as if it had been handled extensively. There was no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a note written in Mark's familiar, slightly messy handwriting. "Ethan," it began, "I've been reflecting a lot about everything. More than you know." I didn't see it then, but I see it now. I let Chloe call the shots because I thought keeping the peace and making her happy was more important than standing up for my best friend. I was wrong. Terribly wrong. You've always had my back, always been there, no matter what. And I made you feel invisible at the most important moment of my life. I don't expect forgiveness. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I wanted to say thank you for everything you did, for always being there. And I'm truly deeply sorry for everything I didn't do, for everything I failed to be. It was signed simply, Mark. No excuses, no demands, just that. A raw, unvarnished apology. I put the letter back in the envelope and set it on my desk. I haven't replied. Not yet. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's letting people sit in the reality they built without you. It's allowing them to finally realize, in your absence, who was holding the roof up the whole time. And this time, I'm not holding it up anymore. I didn't reply to Mark's letter right away. I let it sit there for a week, then 2, tucked beneath a heavy paperweight on my desk. It wasn't out of spite. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate the apology. I did. In fact, a part of me, a deeply buried, wounded part, had waited my whole life to hear him admit he was wrong without the usual deflections. Without the "but you're too sensitive" or "I didn't mean it like that" escape routes he always clung to. It was a genuine apology, stripped bare of all the typical Markisms. But I also knew this wasn't just about an engagement party. It wasn't even just about a seat. This was about years, decades really, of being the backup plan, the problem solver, the emotional punching bag, the forgotten pillar. I had spent so long playing the role of the steady, dependable friend that I didn't even realize how far I had let myself be pushed down, how much I had diminished myself, just to make others comfortable, to maintain a perceived harmony that benefited everyone but me. And now the silence I was holding wasn't bitterness, it was clarity. A profound, unsettling clarity. I needed to decide, truly, what kind of relationship I wanted going forward. Not just with Mark, but with my family, with my social circle as a whole. I needed to redefine my boundaries, redefine my worth. And then the holidays rolled around. Thanksgiving, that sacred American tradition of gathering and giving thanks. That year, it was at a mutual friend's house, a casual potluck affair. They'd gone all out, a massive roasted turkey, homemade stuffing, cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie, the whole festive spread. It was a warm, inviting atmosphere, the scent of cinnamon and roasted vegetables filling the air. To my surprise, Mark was there. Chloe, notably, was not. My friend Sarah whispered to me later that Chloe had other plans this year, which, let's be honest, probably translated to, she couldn't face the people who had seen through her perfectly curated facade. I hadn't committed to going to the potluck, unsure if I was ready for a confrontation, but Sarah had called me a week prior, her voice warm and sincere. "It would mean a lot if you came, Ethan. No drama, I promise. Just good food and good company." So I said yes, not to be polite, not to keep the peace, but because I was no longer avoiding hard conversations. I was ready to face them, on my terms. When I walked into the house that afternoon, things felt different, not tense exactly, but quieter than usual. A subtle shift in the social dynamic. Acquaintances who typically gave me a quick nod now offered lingering glances, some even a hesitant smile. My aunt, usually effusive, offered an awkward, almost apologetic smile. Mark was in the kitchen, surprisingly, helping carve the turkey, his sleeves rolled up. When he saw me, his movements faltered. He froze for a moment, then slowly, stiffly, gave a small wave. I nodded in return, a neutral gesture. We sat down to eat. The conversation flowed around us, but Mark was uncharacteristically quiet through most of dinner. He picked at his food, occasionally offering a strained laugh at someone's joke. His gaze kept darting to me, quick, nervous glances like he was waiting for a cue, a signal, a word, anything that would indicate that everything was fine again, that the chasm between us had closed. I didn't give it to him. Not yet. After dessert, while people were milling about sipping coffee and a muted football game played softly in the background, Mark approached me in the living room. We were alone for a moment, the hum of conversation around us creating a strange, intimate bubble. "Thanks for coming, Ethan," he said quietly, his voice low, almost humble. I nodded. "Thanks for the letter." He looked visibly relieved, as if those few words were the icebreaker he had desperately needed. I meant what I said in it, every word. I was a fool. I let things get way, way out of hand. You did, I replied, my voice steady, uncompromising. I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. He needed to hear it. Stark and unvarnished, said aloud, not just read in a letter. He winced, a flicker of pain crossing his face, but he didn't argue. He actually listened. I thought maybe we could just get back to normal? He asked, hope coloring his tone. I stared at him, letting the full weight of my next words land. What does that even mean, Mark? Because for me, normal was being your backup. It was being the guy you called when you needed a bailout, but not when you got a promotion. It was being seated behind the bar like I was an afterthought at your engagement party. It was always giving, never receiving. He sighed, a deep, shuddering breath. He finally met my gaze, and I saw real remorse there, not just regret over consequences. I know that now, and I don't want it to be like that anymore. I really don't. You can want that, I said, my voice softening slightly, but still firm. But you have to earn it. I'm not handing out second chances like candy. You don't get to disrespect someone for years, take them for granted, and then expect to fix it all with one apology, no matter how sincere. He looked down, nodding, his shoulders slumping. He seemed genuinely lost. So, what do I do then? I crossed my arms, considering. You show up, consistently. You stop making everything about yourself. You take responsibility without being asked or forced, and you stop expecting me to play the fixer, the silent problem solver, every time your world falls apart. You have to put in the work, Mark. Real work. He nodded again, slower this time, absorbing my words. Okay, I can do that. I shrugged, a small, non-committal gesture. We'll see. He didn't press the issue further, didn't try to hug me or crack a joke to ease the palpable tension between us. For once, he let the full weight of his mistakes hang in the air without trying to wriggle out from under them. That was progress. Real progress. Over the next few months, something genuinely interesting happened. Mark actually tried. He started small, tentative texts, but without asking for anything. Hey, how's work going? Saw that article about historic Boston renovations. Thought of you. Just thinking of you. Hope you're doing well. They weren't overly sentimental, just consistent, a steady drip of presence. Then one crisp Saturday morning, he showed up at my apartment building. I opened the door to find him holding a tray of steaming coffee cups and a bag of warm, fresh bagels from my favorite local bakery. No reason, he said, holding up the bag, a small, hopeful smile on his face. Just wanted to hang out if you're free. We watched a college football game together, talked about work. He didn't bring up the engagement party once, didn't ask for help with any looming disaster, just existed with me as a friend side by side, quietly. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation, not by any stretch. I didn't trust him overnight, couldn't just erase years of ingrained patterns, but something fundamental had shifted within him, and little by little I allowed myself to meet him halfway. The cautious steps turned into firmer strides. Chloe, though. She never reached out again, not once. I heard through the grapevine that she wasn't thrilled with the way things had unraveled, how her perfect image had been chipped away. She lost a few social connections after the party fallout, especially among mutual friends who had seen my posts and witnessed her dismissive behavior. She had a reputation now, a quiet, lingering whisper in our social circles, not one I gave her, but one she undeniably earned through her own actions. By late spring, Mark and Chloe announced they were taking space, not officially separated, not yet, but simply reevaluating the relationship. I wasn't surprised. From what I heard, things had been tense between them since the disastrous, cut-short European tour, and my refusal to continue being their doormat, their silent enabler, had apparently forced them to confront a lot of pre-existing cracks in their foundation. Mark didn't go into detail, didn't badmouth her, but one day over lunch he said, his voice soft, contemplative, I think I got so caught up in impressing everyone, pleasing Chloe's vision of perfection, that I forgot how to just be real. She loved the version of me that fit her Instagram feed, the one who could throw lavish parties and travel glamorously, not the guy eating cold pizza in a hoodie at midnight, talking about his fears and hopes. I just nodded. It wasn't my place to weigh in, to judge their relationship. But I was glad he was seeing it now, glad he was understanding the cost of living a life built on appearances. That summer, Mark invited me to his small backyard barbecue for his birthday. No tuxedos, no elaborate centerpieces, no carefully constructed seating charts. Just a handful of close friends, grilled burgers, and a cooler full of cheap beers. He was wearing a faded t-shirt and jeans. As I walked into his backyard, he grinned, tossed me a pair of grilling tongs, and said, You're on grill duty, Ethan. Tradition, right? It wasn't a grand gesture. There was no public declaration, no effusive apology. It was just a small, simple moment, but it felt like something profoundly real. And when the night wound down, the stars bright above us, he raised his beer bottle, his voice raspy with emotion, and said to the small circle of friends, To Ethan, for showing me what a true friend should be, even when I didn't deserve it. I didn't make a speech. I didn't need to. I just clinked bottles with him, the soft thud echoing in the quiet night, and said, a wry smile playing on my lips, Took you long enough, Mark. Everyone laughed, a genuine, easy laughter, The moment passed, but in that shared laughter, something settled within me. Something deep and true. Forgiveness isn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about choosing who's worth giving the future to. And sometimes it's about finally realizing that you're worth fighting for. I still keep the vintage book I bought for their engagement in my study. It sits on a prominent shelf amidst other cherished volumes. It's not a painful reminder anymore. It's just a book. Beautiful, solid, a classic. And finally, truly, being appreciated the way it was meant to be. Just like me.